Mr. Kruger, thank you so much for coming through. Your take on this ruling?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
All right, let's get your reaction to the ruling.
I've listened to... I think there's, like in any situation, there are two sides to that. Certainly the decriminalization will afford the people who use it in the correct manner, the opportunity to use it. My problem as a pharmacist and as someone that has been involved with drug abuse for many, many years is the percentage of people that will not knowingly walk into a trap where they will be using this medication or this Dagga and then use that as an entry drug into whatever might follow. Statistics prove that 20 to 30% of people that have been exposed to Dagga will eventually end up being abusers of Dagga. That is apart from the fact that there are also a lot of medical evidence that shows Dagga has got 50 times bigger chance of getting cancer, lung cancer, than cigarette smoke has. And then thirdly, being involved in the drug abuse field, I'm quite surprised that the government is clamping down on the excessive use of other recreational drugs like alcohol and nicotine, and yet now we're seeing the legalization of Dagga. For me, that is, it's not quite clear how one can do that. Yeah. If one looks at statistics in countries where they have used Dagga, like in the US, where 29 of the states Dagga has been decriminalized, and one looks at one specific statistic, like in Colorado, a recent study showed that people involved in car accidents, that there's a 50-fold increase in people that have used Dagga, to be involved in an accident, because it does affect certain areas of your brain. Your depth perception is being affected. All right. So sure, the people that are now going to use it, their rights are now being entrenched and they have the right to use it. If that person is the bus driver, which I catch every morning to work, and I happen to be a person on that bus, and that person cannot quite perceive the depth and he causes an accident, how is my right being infringed and protected?
All right. But some people are of the view that this is a victory for medicinal purposes. I hear you, of course, talking about the recreational part of the usage of Dagga. But for medicinal purposes, do you not think perhaps it's a victory? Because in 2012, there's a study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which basically showed that marijuana improved lung functions and it also increased lung capacity.
There's more than 200, and some people claim more than 400 different chemical entities in Dagga. Of those, there are 2, maybe 3, or maybe 4 active chemical constituents that has some sort of medicinal property. And cannabidiol is one of them, and it's been tested in epilepsy. In fact, there is a drug that is in phase 3 trials in the US against epilepsy, also as a painkiller and as working against anxiety there. So if one can extract those chemicals or synthetically manufacture them, then you have got control over the quantity of chemicals that you are now being exposed to. If you are using Dagga that is being grown in your backyard, where Dagga started off in the hippie era in the 1960s, the THC, tetrahydrocannabidiol levels, which is the addictive property or the anxiolytic property there, used to be in the region of 3%. With hydroponic growth nowadays, THC levels can be as high as 60 to 80%. So you're talking of a much, much stronger drug. And that is where the real danger lies.
All right. If I understand you correctly, basically you're not entirely opposed to the use of Dagga for medicinal purposes, but your concern really is around the measurements of the Dagga usage.
Absolutely. If there is, in fact, indeed, and there has been proven too that those few constituents are effectively, as happens, 25% of all medicine that is on the market today are derived from plants. Very few of them are actually on a day-to-day basis still being extracted from plants. Most have been synthetically constituted and manufactured into drugs. And if that is the case, then why don't we do that and rather expose people to a drug that you do not know what the levels are of the active chemical that is in there? And what about the non-active chemicals that has an harmful effect on the body? That is where my worry is. And then specifically, if I'm talking about concerns, is when it comes to children there. The area that the THC affects in the brain is very near to the so-called reward center in the brain. And it affects that reward center. And the reward center is that which makes you go back for more. If you and me have a very nice meal, or we watch a nice picture, or we listen to some nice music, that reward center is stimulated. But the moment we are exposed to drugs like cannabis and many of the other drugs, it is 20-fold as strong a stimulant as it would have been with a normal one. So the craving to go back for more will exist. It is a fact that Dagga has been shown to be not so much physically dependent forming there, but the psychological dependence, that craving for more, to go back, because it makes you relaxed. You heard those people saying, it makes you relaxed. So a certain amount of stress is necessary in our lives. If you relax all the time, we probably not function. So that is what brings people back to that, and then eventually leads some of them to experiment with other drugs that are much more dangerous.
All right. So lastly, Dr. Kruger, do you not think that today's ruling should open doors for more research on the use of Dagga going forward for medicinal purposes?
It's already been approved for that purpose. And I just hope that in the next 2 years, government will very clearly think about how to implement this. You know, there are a percentage of the population that is going to be harmed by this decision. And if one person is harmed, it's one person too many. It's the same when you have a drug addict there. We don't want everybody to be, you know, anybody to be harmed there. And I'm glad for the people that have been using it sensibly, in the sense that they at least will not be criminally prosecuted there. But there are exceptions there. And as a population, we always have to look after the people that are vulnerable. Our children, our older patients, and our pregnant mothers. And there are a lot of dangers involved in those people, because Dagga gets secreted through the blood-brain barrier and through the blood-milk barrier. So the unborn baby can get that into it. And if you are a pregnant mother, would you use that if you know it might have an effect on your baby? I think not.
All right, we have to leave it at that. Time constraints. Thank you so much for coming through. Many thanks to Johan Kruger. He's a pharmacist and he's the former president for the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa, of course, giving his views on today's ruling on the use of Dagga, basically saying that many people may be dependent on Dagga should this go on.